For 9 years, Cesar Millan walked into homes where families were scared of their own dogs. These were animals that had bitten people, destroyed homes, and terrified everyone around them. Yet time after time, he seemed to calm them down without shouting, without fear, and without losing control. Millions watched in amazement. At its peak, The Dog Whisperer reached 11 million viewers every week and aired in more than 80 countries. Cesar became one of the most recognizable faces on television. Then, almost overnight, everything began to unravel. Lawsuits piled up. Animal welfare groups demanded the show be cancelled. Business partners turned into enemies. And behind the scenes, Cesar was fighting a personal battle nobody saw coming. But how did one of television's biggest success stories end in so much chaos? Long before the fame, before the television cameras and worldwide recognition, Cesar Millan was a young man from Culiacan, Mexico, carrying just $100 and a dream. As a child, he had spent countless hours on his grandfather's farm, where animals seemed to trust him naturally. Dogs responded to him differently. They stayed calm around him. By the age of 10, he had already decided he wanted to become the greatest dog trainer in the world. There was just one problem. His family could not afford veterinary school. So he came up with a different plan. He would go to America, find the best dog trainers he could, and learn directly from them. In December 1990, he left home and headed north. The journey was risky. The border region was known for danger, but Cesar crossed anyway. He arrived in California speaking almost no English, with very little money and no connections. Within days, he was struggling to survive. At one point, he slept in a dog kennel where he had convinced someone to give him work. He scavenged for food while the dogs around him were often better fed than he was. It was a difficult beginning. But Cesar refused to quit. And that determination would soon change everything. After moving to Los Angeles, he found work grooming and walking dogs. His skills quickly attracted attention. Wealthy dog owners began recommending him to friends. Word spread because people could see results. One of the people who noticed him was Jada Pinkett Smith. After watching him work, she became convinced he had something special. She also told him something he needed to hear. If he wanted to succeed on television, he had to learn English. The very next day, she arranged for a tutor. Cesar threw himself into learning the language, surrounding himself with English speakers until he could communicate comfortably. Years later, he openly credited her for helping make his success possible. But even then, neither of them could have imagined what was coming next. In 2004, a production company built a television concept around Cesar's unique approach to dogs. The show premiered on the National Geographic Channel with little fanfare. At first, hardly anyone paid attention. The network barely promoted it. Yet viewers who discovered it told their friends. The audience grew rapidly. By the second season, the show expanded into a primetime format. Within a few years, it became one of the biggest programs on television. In 2009, nearly 2 decades after arriving in America with only $100, Cesar became a United States citizen. It looked like the perfect success story. But beneath the surface, a storm was already forming. The criticism started almost as soon as the show became popular. Cesar's method centered around an idea he called calm, assertive energy. He believed many dog behavior problems happened because owners failed to establish leadership. According to his philosophy, dogs needed a strong and stable leader to feel secure. Viewers loved the simplicity of the idea. Watching aggressive dogs become calm in a single afternoon felt almost magical. The explanations were easy to understand and satisfying to watch. But there was one problem. Scientists were increasingly arguing that the theory behind those methods was flawed. And what they discovered would spark years of controversy. Animal behavior experts challenged the foundation of Cesar's approach. Much of it relied on dominance theory, the idea that dogs naturally organize themselves into strict hierarchies led by an alpha figure. Researchers later found that the original wolf studies supporting this theory had serious problems. Those studies observed captive wolves living in artificial conditions. When scientists studied wolves in the wild, they discovered something very different. Wolf packs functioned more like families led by parents rather than constant struggles for dominance. Critics argued that Caesar's methods were built on outdated science. Some experts claimed the show was setting dog training back decades. Animal welfare organizations publicly called for the series to be cancelled. But was the criticism completely fair? Caesar fought back against the attacks. He argued that many of the people criticizing him understood research, but had never faced genuinely dangerous animals in real-life situations. He had spent years working with aggressive dogs that had already bitten people. In those moments, theory alone was not enough. His supporters pointed to hundreds of successful cases as proof that his methods worked. His critics insisted the techniques could increase fear and aggression in certain dogs. The debate became one of the biggest controversies in the world of animal behavior. Yet while the public argued about science, an even bigger threat was quietly building behind closed doors. The first major lawsuit arrived in 2006. A television producer claimed his Labrador Retriever had been injured while staying at Caesar's Dog Psychology Center. The complaint described harsh training methods and alleged the dog suffered severe medical complications that required emergency treatment. The case was eventually settled, but the headlines were damaging. Then, almost immediately, another lawsuit appeared. Former associates claimed they had helped create the dog whisperer concept and argued they had been cut out of the project. They demanded millions in damages. Two major lawsuits in the same week sent a clear message. Legal troubles were becoming part of the show's reality. But these lawsuits were only the beginning. Behind the scenes, the relationships that had built the dog whisperer were collapsing. Caesar entered a bitter legal dispute with the production company that had created the show. He claimed profits were being mishandled. The company fired back with counterclaims. National Geographic became involved after questions emerged about episode distribution and revenue. Other lawsuits followed. Authors, producers, and business partners all found themselves tangled in legal battles. By the final years of the show, multiple parties were suing each other at the same time. It had become a maze of accusations, audits, and financial disputes. And while all of this was happening, Caesar faced the most painful challenge of his life. In 2010, tragedy struck. Daddy, the pit bull who had become Caesar's closest companion and most trusted working partner, died at the age of 16. Daddy was more than a television dog. He had been beside Caesar through the show's rise, helping calm countless aggressive animals. Losing him was devastating. Then, only 4 months later, Caesar's wife filed for divorce after 16 years of marriage. Suddenly, two of the most important parts of his life were gone. The emotional toll was overwhelming. The man who spent years teaching others how to remain calm and balanced could no longer find that balance within himself. And that is when everything reached its darkest point. Perhaps the most surprising twist came years later. The same network that had cancelled the dog whisperer eventually welcomed him back. In 2021, National Geographic launched a new series called Better Human, Better Dog. After years of controversy, lawsuits, criticism, personal tragedy, and professional setbacks, Cesar Millan was once again on television. His story remains one of the most remarkable rises and falls in entertainment history. It is a story about ambition, success, controversy, heartbreak, and resilience. And whether people see him as a misunderstood pioneer or a deeply controversial figure, one thing is impossible to deny. Cesar Millan refused to stay down. Even after everything fell apart, he found a way to start over.